I was still in a half-conscious state when I woke up. The woman extending her hand had a smirk plastered on her face, as if she was taunting me. "Where are my comrades?" I uttered out slowly, trying to remember how to be alive again. The woman's smirk disappeared, and she lowered her hand of greeting. "We have managed to save some of them, but for the others, there wasn't much we could do. We couldn't spare any more manpower on relieving everyone." At first, I felt angry toward her. Why didn't they save them? God damn it! Then I remembered the situation we'd found ourselves in. At that point, I had some understanding. "Then let me see the survivors." As I tried to get up onto my legs, I collapsed. I felt like I was twice as heavy as before. "Merde, don't get up!" She caught me just as I was about to hit the ground. "The steroids and bone thickeners aren't in full effect yet." I wasn't in my suit. That would explain the lack of strength. I grew up on only 38% of Earth's gravity. Even though I had training close to Earth's gravity on artificial habitats around Mars, it seems that wasn't enough. "Wait, where's the suit? Where's my fucking suit? That's Martian military technology, damn it," I said as I realized this is in violation of the Code of Conduct on technological sharing between Earth and Mars. "Mon ami, if we didn't pry you out that sit, it would have been your grave, and second to hell with those laws. We have much more important matters at hand." My head started hurting, and as I grabbed my head in pain, I nodded to the woman. "It's okay. You'll be as good as new in about 15 minutes, right, nurse?" The nurse she looked at nodded. "Oh, of course. How rude of me. My name is Violetta. It is a pleasure to meet you, Mikhail. How do you—" Before I finished my sentence, I realized that my name was written on my suit. I could feel that I was gaining strength in my body, but my head was still spinning. I couldn't think straight. "I'll be back in a few, then I'll show you to your comrades." Then she left, leaving me in the care of the nurse. Her English wasn't great, but we could communicate, sort of. What's your name?" I tried to break the awkward silence as she took my blood pressure with an obsolete device. "We? Your name." "Aha, Maria." She smiled and returned to whatever she was doing next. How long was I out?" This time she just gave a puzzled look. "Ugh, sleep. How long was I asleep?" 3 days. She couldn't introduce herself, but she could tell me how long I was unconscious. "Wait. 3 days!" I shouted. People turned toward me, and the nurse, Maria, jumped a bit. Our mission was supposed to last a week. We lost a lot of time. I suppose the High Command thinks we're KIA. Jesus, I gotta get to the Sergeant. Violetta charged in, I presume, wanting to see what the fuss was all about. "Oh, you are a handful as well," she said, shaking her head. Then she started speaking in French to Maria. She nodded. Then Violetta grabbed my shoulders with a grip that would probably break bones and lifted me from my sitting position to my feet. The woman was shorter than me and about my age, maybe slightly older. But goddammit, she had a strength of 10 men in her. "See, good as new," she smiled as she tapped my now aching shoulders. "Now follow me. You wanted to see your comrades, right?" I obliged, and we exited the large room into a narrow hall. There were leaky pipes protruding out of the walls alongside wires that connected to the fluorescent lights on the ceiling, and the floor was an improvised array of wooden boards and metal sheets. The walls also seemed to have some bits and pieces of street art on it, some of it decades or even centuries old. As we went through the halls, I could see men still on their feet despite lacking limbs. Some had wooden stumps instead of legs. The lucky ones had prosthetics. And despite being in France, I could hear dozens of languages being spoken. I could recognize some as Japanese, German, and Russian, and English, of course. Others I couldn't tell. "You are the last to wake up, and I hope that we don't need to put you asleep again," Violetta said as we came to a metal door. Behind it sounded as if there was brawl. "What do you mean?" She opened the door, and inside I saw a couple of my comrades and nurses holding someone down. "What the fuck is happening?" I said in confusion. "Where are those fucking thick-skinned reptilian scum? I'm going to tear them apart!" "Oh, fuck," I said under my breath. "Michael, Jesus Christ, some help would be appreciated." I quickly rushed to help keep Stanley down, urging him to calm the fuck down. A few moments later, a man rushed in with an injection, quickly injecting Stanley with the serum inside. The moment it entered his bloodstream, he became limp. "What did you give him?" I asked, and before I could get the answer, Stanley answered with a loud snore. Self-explanatory, the man who brought the injection said, panting. Violetta then continued, I was expecting a bit more professionalism in your leadership, but I got a person who will single-handedly deplete the little amount of tranquilizer we have. Yeah, I know, I said, then continued turning to Riley, Max, and Nick, the remaining conscious Martian Marines. You guys all right? Yeah, Nick said. We woke up yesterday, so did Stanley, and we barely had any time to recover before he went berserk again. Before we get up to date with what all happened on each of our respective parts, Violetta chimed in. Michael, I would like you to meet Mark over here. She pointed to the man who brought the tranquilizer. Ah, yes, my name is Mark Pasteur, lead biologist here. I'm actually English. The surname is a coincidence. He gave a firm handshake. Mark, go prepare the alien for demonstration. We'll be down there in 10 minutes. Violetta said. Mark nodded and sprinted back through the door, almost falling face first onto the floor as he exited. Now that your mental faculties are in full operation, I will explain the situation as best I can. I waited for all of you to wake up, but the exception is your sergeant. Anyways. She crossed her arms and looked at each of us. We are in the Parisian catacombs. When the invasion happened, refugees flooded down here, and when the army was routed, a resistance formed here, as you can see. The catacombs weren't dug during the invasion. These tunnels date back as far as the 1700s, maybe even earlier. The extraterrestrials, or Xenos as you call them, don't appear to be well-versed in subterranean habitation, nor are they well-versed in fighting in enclosed spaces. They dominate in wide and open spaces as well as in aerial combat. That's why you could see they love to pummel cities to the ground. But they do rarely use tight spaces for ambushes, because they became aware that we became aware of their weakness. Furthermore, their physiology has some similarities to our own. That will be demonstrated by Professor Mark shortly. Any more questions? We all looked at each other. Then I recalled something Violetta said when I just woke up. You said that this was the Western HQ? Did you imply there is a Southeast or North HQ as well? I questioned. Ah, yes. There is only an Eastern HQ, though we lost contact with them not too long ago. Moscow, they had a similar idea to us. They hunkered down in their old metro system. It was decommissioned in the early 22nd century. But the old trains were still operational, so they could transport men and supplies quickly throughout the city and launch guerrilla attacks at any part of the city with great speed. Or so they told us, at least. Now we have a demonstration to attend. Follow me, gentlemen. We followed Violetta through the halls once more. This time we came to an ancient staircase which went in a circle downwards. When we reached the end of it, a hallway led directly to an open room with an operating table at its center. We could see that this part of the catacombs had a much more effort put into the renovation. The floors were solid at the very least. Ah, here you are, Mark said, a mask adorning his face, though by his eyes we could see he was smiling. We could see a Xeno strapped to the operating table. He was well restrained, so we relaxed. Okay, Mark said as he strapped latex gloves to his hands. This specimen is an average grunt, as you might as well be aware of. Other than looking like a reptile and having the skin of a reptile, its brain is large, unlike other reptiles. We figured, Riley said, stone-faced. Yes, I couldn't determine their exact mental capacity, though my theory is that a large portion of their brain is delegated solely to instinct rather than logic. They might be genetically modified specifically for combat because the part of their brain responsible for emotions such as fear is much smaller in comparison to other parts of the brain. Proportionally speaking, they are hardwired killing machines. Not only that, their bodies seem to indicate they have evolved on a planet with smaller gravity, and the muscle mass in their upper body and lower body is plain absurd if that's the case. Their skin is, well, it's tough. He opened an adjacent drawer and took out a large hunting knife. Someone want to volunteer straight into the heart. It's slightly lower to where a human heart would be. He pointed to the spot. I'll do it, Max said. He was the largest among. He could deliver quite a blow. He grabbed the hunting knife, raised it above his head with both hands. Then with all his might, struck down to the exact spot where its heart was. The knife, well, it broke, and the Xeno skin barely had a scratch on it. We looked in awe for a moment. Then the Xeno opened its eyes. Holy shit, it's alive! It scanned the room, looking at each of us. "Ha, don't worry, it's paralyzed and strapped. It's harmless. John, give me the sleeping agent." He motioned with his hand. "I need him alive," he said as he started injecting the serum directly on top of its head. "How the hell can a needle pierce its skin, let alone its skull? And how are bullets effective against its skin?" I said, "Well, the rest of its body is well armored. The only anomaly is the top of its head, which is soft for some reason. I can't ascertain why at the moment. But when it comes to how can our bullets pierce their skin, it's simple. Their skin was made to handle blunt force trauma, but not at high speeds. Their skin can withstand heat damage surprisingly well, though. That then means that they don't have enemies who use kinetic weaponry as much. Their defense is focused on energy weapons. This also supports my theory of them being genetically modified for combat." I recalled that one resistance member that jumped onto that beast thing, piercing the top of its head with a bayonet. "One question, Doc. Do those dog bull things have the same weakness?" "Oh, you mean the hellhounds?" "From what I hear, yes, but I didn't have the chance to study it. It's simply too large to be practically brought down here." I nodded, processing the information given to me. Then someone rushed through the door. "Mrs. Petain, we have established contact with the Martian fleet." "How? Wasn't there a blockade? Messages could hardly enter or exit the atmosphere?" Violetta said. "The Martian fleet broke the blockade. They tell us the main land support is incoming soon." "That's Mars for you, haha," Riley said with a smile on his face. "How many are coming?" Violetta continued. 5 million in the first wave, 10 million in the second." Her eyes went wide. I could see she was in shock at those numbers. The Terrans obviously aren't aware of the sheer amount of volunteers that signed up, as well as the production capacity of our industry. And hell, Mars's shipyards roared like the forges of Hades, working at full capacity 24/7, and then some. "Did you establish contact with Moscow?" "No, ma'am, but we did establish contact with the Balkans." "What's the situation?" "They are holding by a thread, ma'am." "The Balkans?" I said, curious. "The front line, if those tough bastards didn't hold Europe, would have been overrun." "Wasn't Europe already overrun?" Max questioned. "Your definition of overrun will change as well when you see the situation there." She almost ran out of the door. We followed. "Martian fleets managed to break through. Help is on the way!" After we came up, we saw the situation was a lot more rowdy than before. People were running around and passing as much info as they could. Violetta then suddenly stopped and motioned us to enter a room. There we saw Stanley, awake and not hell-bent on destroying everything around him. He was on a radio, calmly saying, "Yes, sir," and "understood." He looked at us, squinted. Then he smiled with a familiar look. "New orders, boys. High command picking us up ASAP. We're going to the Balkans, ha 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 ha. Better suit up." He pointed to our suits, neatly lined up at a wall. Violetta looked at us with a hint of worry in her eyes. Good luck, and she was gone. As for us, well, we're probably screwed.